Welcome everybody to our kickoff of the Moving Maine Mobility Learning Community. We're really psyched to have so many people here today. And we know that folks are often juggling things, but if you can come on screen so we can see each other and connect faces with names and get some energy from one another, that would be great. So our topic for today is getting to the workplace, which is a very important topic right now for many of us. So we'll be focused on some of the challenges and solutions that are available in rural, suburban, and urban parts of the state. So little bit of housekeeping, we are recording, and so we will have this session available after on our YouTube channel. Please stay muted unless you're contributing, but we do look forward to having you all contribute. We look forward to having a discussion. Keep doing introductions in the chat of who you are, your region, and your favorite mode of transportation. A big part of what we hope to accomplish here is for you to network with one another so that when opportunities arise, you know exactly who to reach out to and partner. So I jumped right in. I'm Zoe Miller. I'm the facilitator of the Moving Maine Network, and I am working as a private consultant doing this work right now, and really working with an amazing team of people. So Heather Drake, who did a lot of the planning for today, and we have a wonderful steering committee that supports the work, and I see many of you here today, so thanks for being here. We are joined today by two folks who are going to do presentations, and we wanted to start off with just a little bit of background on Moving Maine, and we like to just make sure we're all on the same page as much as possible. Before I jump into that, I just want to say we do strive to use inclusive and accessible practices as we do meetings. And so we're very open to your feedback on how that's going, but we're trying to make it possible for folks to participate from different perspectives and levels of abilities. So we encourage you to speak slowly and clearly, to introduce yourself when you speak. And again, we're open to feedback on how we can do it better in the future. So Moving Maine is all about envisioning a Maine where all people can have access to transportation, no matter of their background, their destination, or where they live, whether it's rural, urban, or suburban. We really focus on centering equity. And so we have this graphic that I've shared before that is from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and just distinguishing that, we often talk about having equality and making sure everybody has the same things, but as the graphic depicts, giving everybody the same things, like the same bicycle, doesn't necessarily make it work for everybody. So, but equity is about giving everybody the right kind of supports, and so the right kind of bicycle. And we also acknowledge that this is not necessarily this. There are other folks that aren't depicted in this graphic, and we actually had our own Jess Maurer, who's part of the network, reach out to Robert Wood Johnson to suggest that they amend the graphic to include somebody using an adaptive bicycle. So we're looking forward to seeing that. They were interested in making that adjustment. So pursuing equity in transportation really means focusing on systems so that the folks with the least advantages can overcome barriers and reach opportunity. And our core strategies for doing that is to strengthen our network across Maine, getting us connected with one another. And again, so we know who to call when we need input, thought partners, ideas, support. We are also focused on informing policy change. And so we're working on what are the top priorities for policy that supports transportation access. And we hope you'll respond to the survey and get involved with that effort if you have the time. We are interested in supporting better coordination. So building the foundation through our networking, but hopefully getting to the place where we would have mobility management programs across the state, so that we know that there's actually capacity and real support to make solutions happen. And finally, we really believe in amplifying mobility stories. So amplifying the stories of what's working along with what the challenges are, and elevating the voices of people who use transportation services, who use public transportation, who rely on friends and family for rides. So we had the Maine Mobility Summit it wrapped up in June, and we had some themes that came out of the summit that we took a look across the different conversations that happened, and many of you were part of that. And, at the top of the list, equitable access to transportation was there, and talking about the work that people want to do in their regions across the state. Coordinated transportation was also a big theme of how do we get the links to happen between the different providers and the different stakeholders. Ensuring diverse voices go into planning and decision making, and some great ideas around that. Being financially accessible. So there were a lot of conversations about how do we get transportation to be, how do we get support for folks accessing public transportation who don't have funds? How do we make personal vehicles and hopefully even like electric personal vehicles available to more people? Active transportation is a big one. We all spend some part of our commute walking, biking, or rolling. And we believe, in raising our voices through advocacy. So that was one of the big conversations. And enhancing connections between public health and transportation. So thinking about the critical role that transportation access plays in people's ability to live a healthy and full life, and kind of making that case to decision makers, and including voices of emergency management agencies and DOT planners and engineers in our work. So that's just a taste of what we covered at the summit. We are hard at work right now to build capacity to do more support for regional and local efforts. What we are hoping to do with the learning community is offer people kind of an on-ramp to learning across Maine from each other. And our hope, and what we're trying to build capacity for, is to do much more hands-on support of regional groups. So that is a work in progress. And if you have fundraising skills and an interest in that, hit me up, because we are looking for folks to be involved with that part of how do we build the resources to keep the network going. And I would love to talk with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather in a moment, but I wanted to just recap that our goals for this learning community are pretty much, focused on you all sharing and hearing from other folks around the state. So sharing expertise that helps you move to action on transportation solutions. So what we would love to see out of this is for people to come away and say, hey, I'm going to call up Tim or some of the providers that he's pointing me to and figure out how we can make something happen in my region. Or I'm going to talk to Go Maine and figure out how we can get more people in my region using their platform. And of course, building relationships is critical to that, so that we know the face and the name of the person that we want to connect with. We will be asking for your input on other topics you want to see as part of this. And you've given us a lot of food for thought already, but keep it coming, because it does change. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather to introduce our presenters for today.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Heather Drake. I'm the coordinator with Moving Maine, and thank you all for being here today. We're really looking forward to the presentations and discussions. So we'll hear from both Tim and Pat today about their respective work. And after each presentation, we'll have time for questions. And then we'll move into an overall discussion with everybody. So I will introduce both of them at once. Tim Sturdivant is the Whole Family Services Program Manager with Maine's Office for Family Independence. And Pat Higgins is the Go Maine Outreach Coordinator with Go Maine. So Tim, I will turn it to you first, and I believe you're going to share your slides so we can take our sound, Zoe.
Great. Okay, let me share presentation. Can you guys see that? Actually, I can't see it.
Oops, we had it and then it went away.
Yeah, I'm unmessing up the mess up that I did.
Okay.
All right, now can you see it again?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Tim Sturdivant. I'm the Whole Family Services Program Manager with the Office for Family Independence, which is an office within Maine Department of Health and Human Services. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of specifically the transportation resources within OFIs, the Office for Family Independence, within our programs. I would just keep in mind that these are humongous big programs that have a lot of different elements and a lot of other different resources. So again, I'm just focusing on the transportation, but these are really, really massive and helpful programs that I think I want you to keep in mind. Also, I will preface this too by saying, if you are a service agency, as I present some of these resources, I think it's really helpful to try to think about people that you serve and how these resources might be able to help them. So think of actual families that you've met and who maybe could access these resources. If you're on the employer side of it, I would encourage you to, first of all, reach out to us. We have a ton of families who are always looking for employment, and we have a lot of work requirements that those families encounter, and we love to connect them, obviously, to jobs and employment. And we do a ton of coordination with statewide employers to get families hired. So just please reach out to me if you're in that situation. So in general, OFI's sort of big objective is family stability, and that's incredibly broadly defined depending on the program. Most of our programs are centered around either employment or education. So you probably have some general familiarity with the Office for Family Independence's programs, TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's kind of your traditional welfare to work program. So that's cash assistance for families. And then there's SNAP, which is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. You might know that as Food Supplement Program. And then Maine Care, which is health insurance. So those are kind of the big three: TANF, which is cash assistance; SNAP, which is food assistance; and then Maine Care, which is health insurance assistance. We also run the Higher Opportunities for Pathways to Employment program, which is the HOPE program. That's for educational assistance for people who are enrolled in college. And then the General Assistance program, which is administered by the municipalities, but funded by the state and managed by the state. So that's kind of like a big overall programs. There's obviously like a lot there, but I'm going to just go through program by program and talk about specifically the transportation resources for each. So the biggest state program is TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. So the ASPIRE program is the workforce participation element of TANF. So if you're a family who is under a certain income level, you're eligible for cash assistance, which is TANF. And then the cash assistance comes with a workforce readiness program, which is called ASPIRE. So the vast majority of families who are getting cash assistance also have access to this program called ASPIRE, which helps with things like job prep and interviews and job searches. So the transportation assistance in that, again, is a small part of that. TANF and ASPIRE offer childcare payment. They can do things like buy uniforms for people. There's a ton of different supports that are included in TANF ASPIRE. Specifically for transportation, this is the most resources somebody could possibly get for transportation. In TANF ASPIRE is they could get gas mileage, bus passes, taxis it can pay for, auto repair up to $1,000 a year. It can pay for somebody's registration, insurance, monthly insurance premiums, pay for somebody's driver's ed, license fees, transportation planning in general is a huge part of that program. And I honestly, like, I used to work in the Aspire program. I don't anymore, but I've never seen a transportation related expense that couldn't be covered for a family who is currently enrolled in the Aspire program. Like, I think we've even paid people's traffic tickets before if it meant that they could get to work. I will say that this is typically for quite low income families would qualify for TANF. And they need to have either an educational or an employment related activity that they're going to. So there's a little bit of a sticking point with some families with the medical transportation, or like, I need to go get groceries, that type of thing kind of falls in a little bit of a crack with TANF and Aspire. But that being said, like, if we repair somebody's car so they can get to work, like, they have a car so they can do all their activities. So there are a ton of transportation supports in the TANF Aspire program. The Alternative Aid is another TANF program. Alternative Aid is sort of a TANF diversionary program. If there's a family who is currently employed or actively seeking employment, but doesn't want to receive TANF cash assistance, they can still get their car repaired through the Alternative Aid program with the state. So if somebody just lost a job, or they're actively looking for work, or they're currently employed and they have an emergency auto repair, and the difference between keeping that employment and losing that employment comes down to the auto repair, through Alternative Aid, they can get assistance to fix their car. This program is all through voucher payments. And again, it's a means tested program, so they need to be under a certain income level, but Alternative Aid is there available to help fix somebody's car to get to work. Transitional transportation. So transitional transportation is for families who have come off of TANF, off of temporary assistance for needy families, into employment. They can still, essentially, if somebody's cash assistance closes, they can keep their childcare and their transportation assistance. I'm pretty sure until the kids turn 13. So quite a while they can keep the transportation and gas mileage assistance through that. So basically, if somebody was ever on TANF in their entire life and then they move into employment, the state will pay the gas mileage, or for a bus pass, or potentially a taxi until their children turn 13. So it's a really long-term benefit. There's also new legislation that passed. I'm not 100% sure exactly where it is right now. I think we're still in the rules process, but this transitional transportation is imminently going to expand to non-TANF families under 250% federal poverty level, which is actually a pretty big eligibility threshold that hopefully is going to welcome a lot more families into this. But essentially, families who never even have received any other type of assistance, in the future, if they're under 250% federal poverty level, if they're at that income level, they can get gas mileage from the state to help get to work. So that's a really kind of big deal expansion of the ability of DHS to pay for people's gas to get to work. Parents as Scholars is the TANF education program. So essentially it's the same as TANF cash assistance. They get a cash benefit and they have access to all of the other TANF supports as well. But where TANF is focused on people who are actively seeking employment or are currently employed, Parents as Scholars can assist people who are enrolled in post-secondary education. So lots of single parents with children who are enrolled in an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree are eligible for Parents as Scholars. So that sort of saves them the need to work while they're in school. They can get a cash benefit, and they can get childcare paid for, and they can get all of these different transportation resources while they're in school too. So for families who are seeking post-secondary employment or interested in it, I would highly encourage them to look into the Parents as Scholars program. HOPE is the department's other big education program. The main difference between HOPE and Parents as Scholars is that HOPE is not a cash benefit. But again, it's meant to help parents who essentially, if a family is employed or they're getting some sort of income or whatever, if they don't want TANF or don't qualify for TANF cash assistance, HOPE allows them to still, up to a much higher income level, still get all of those transportation supports to attend university. And HOPE also comes with childcare supports as well. So again, if there's a parent who's attending university and they're not getting TANF, but they still want help with gas and childcare so they can keep going to school, the HOPE program is a great option for them. SNAP, Unemployment and Training Program, is meant for SNAP recipients, so people who are getting the food supplement, and not on TANF. And this one is not restricted to parents with children. This one's just open to anybody receiving SNAP, which again, that's a pretty high income eligibility. It's quite a large group of people in the state of Maine receive SNAP. So this is again opening up the options for people who maybe don't qualify for a different program. If they're getting SNAP, they can get some sort of transportation assistance if they are actively seeking employment or training. So again, it's the employment and training outcomes are sort of critical with this program as well. But they can still get, so if somebody's getting SNAP and they're going to a training program, they can get gas mileage, bus pass, taxi, car repair, and they will help with them with transportation planning and sort of organizing their transportation resources. Whole family services. So these are the programs I manage. I mostly included them so I could talk about my own programs a little bit. There's not a lot of money dedicated to families enrolled in these programs, but the service model of these programs is that it's a very intensive and all-encompassing coaching program. So with these programs are completely voluntary. They don't get families don't get a cash benefit. But they're connected to a family coach who essentially helps them just whatever their goals are, whether that's finding health insurance or getting their child with a primary care physician or attending an education program or employment, whatever their goal is, finding new housing. Whole family services it takes the goals of the family and helps them sort of make a plan to achieve those goals. So there's not a lot of cash assistance for the family. But if there's families who are kind of having trouble navigating all of these really complicated state programs or other regional programs, and they just need help kind of connecting the dots, I would really recommend referring them to my programs because I love my programs and they're extremely helpful. The whole family service programs, they can just help somebody kind of figure out what their transportation options are and sort of get their ducks in a row and figure it out. The last big one, which is actually outside of the Office for Family Independence. So this is probably the one I have the least capacity to answer questions about, but I can certainly find answers to questions if you have them. Our Maine Care's non-emergency transportation services for Maine Care members. If they're going to an appointment that is being paid for by Maine Care, they also have options for access to get to that appointment. They can get transportation. They can have somebody come to their house and pick them up, or it can pay for gas mileage to get to a medical appointment as well. So this is an incredibly utilized program, an incredibly, I would say, publicly visible program. So if anybody works with, I'm sorry, it's just a medical providers on, I'm sure you're well aware of the non-emergency transportation program through Maine Care. But if anybody works with Maine Care recipients, then just know that there is transportation to and from medical appointments available to them as well. All right, that was super fast, tons of programs. If anybody wants me to go back to a slide and go over a specific program or has any sorts of general questions, I'm absolutely happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Tim. So first question is whether we can have access to these slides.
Sure.
So yes, thank you. We can send those out to all the registrants after the presentation along with the recording. And so we'll move into a few questions for Tim before we hear from Pat. I'm not seeing any questions pop up yet, but Rachel she mentioned she was not aware of that service with Maine Care, so I was really excited that that's an opportunity. Julia wants to know, with SNAP, could someone get car repairs covered if they're attending an online education program?
That's a really good question. I'm not going to speak to the SNAP ENT program manager. My assumption is that if they could show that employment or education was imminent where they needed transportation to it, then it would be available. But if you want to shoot me an email, I will happily forward that to the SNAP ENT person so they could answer that question.
Thanks, Tim. And Sarah Cushman, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much for this, Tim. I feel like I've seen versions of this before, and every time I learn something new, so I totally appreciate the recap too. I guess I wondered if you could speak to, and maybe it's something you speak to now or share more with us another time, but I love the coaching, like the commute coaching or whatever we want to call it, the transportation planning piece, and just wondering how those folks gain more knowledge about on the ground resources that exist, like Go Maine or the local transit provider, those kinds of things, like how we can connect with those folks.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I probably should have included a whole slide about that. I'm gonna share it just so I can see your wonderful faces. So yeah, specifically for the Aspire program, the state provider for those services is FedCap. So anybody who's enrolled in Aspire or receiving TANF and enrolled in Aspire, they're participating with FedCap. So FedCap will do a lot of outreach and coordination with local transportation services. They're also always extremely happy for transportation providers to come in and present services and connect with family participants there. I would love to facilitate some of those connections. Anybody can email me for that, or you can contact FedCap directly. They would be very amenable to figuring that out. Same thing with SNAP and HOPE and all of those. I work with those people every day, so just shoot me an email. I think from my experience with FedCap, there has been a lot of great work done coordinating resources, but there's also just sort of a lack of information on their end about what's available for families, and on the transportation providers end about the types of payments that those families can get to pay for transportation. So I think the big need is connecting the actual buses and cars and things to the money that we can provide for families and kind of bridging that gap. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Tim. And Mireille, go ahead and come off mute for your question.
Yeah, my name is Mireille Kabongo. I am an immigrant and person with disability and mobility liaison with the Moving Man Network. I have a question because as an immigrant, most of the resources from DHS are linking on our immigration status. Mm-hmm. If sometime your work permits are expired and you don't have access to all of these resources, in the past, like in Trump administration, most of the immigrant status was like they delay work permit, they delay green card, they delay everything. And the delay make that people lose they can lose their work permits, but the delay, that can take time for them to back to the work. What the DHS are doing about all of those people who don't have who have work permits, but they delay. They are waiting for the receipt. There is no receipt, but when they are coming to the DHS for help, there is no help for those people. I don't know what's going on. And can you tell us more about immigrants?
Yeah, certainly. There is within the programs, there are, unfortunately, and this is a huge area of, I say this, I mean, for me too, as somebody who works in these programs, there are some programs that immigration status can be tricky. I will say for TANF and Aspire, which is our biggest program, that program does allow asylum seekers to enroll in the program. So families, asylees and asylum seekers can get TANF in the state of Maine and have access to all those resources. So FedCap participants, FedCap families, a lot of them, their status is asylum seeker, so they can get those resources. If somebody has absolutely no status, that's a little trickier, but I think that there's a huge group in there, which is asylum seekers who don't have a work permit yet. While they're waiting for their work permit, they can get TANF. So have people apply for TANF. And in general, I would say, have people apply. That's the big takeaway I want people to have is don't try to be selective about who you're having apply for services. That's sort of our job. Have them apply for the services and see if they get them, because the eligibility is extremely complicated, but in general, TANF is available. I will also again point to the whole family service programs, which my programs, the whole family service agencies, they have no restrictions as far as immigration status. A family just needs some status, but it's the entire range, and those services are really meant to take new Mainer and immigrant families and help them access the resources that they're eligible for, and sort of guide them through that with linguistically and culturally appropriate services. So again, those are not cash assistance programs, but they can help immigrant families connect to the programs that they're eligible for. So I would say refer any family, if you want to refer them to whole family services, please. It's a statewide program, and just get in contact with me, and I'd love to facilitate a referral.
Thank you, Tim. And that was a great question, Mirai. And we do have, so there's a couple more questions in the chat that we'll circle back to if we have time, or maybe Tim, you could answer them in the chat. So I want to make sure that we have time to hear from Pat and also to do some discussion. So Pat, I will turn it over to you to share.
Sure, I will go ahead and share my screen now. Can someone just comment in the chat that you can see my screen appropriately, or someone to
Yes,
speak
we
out
can
loud?
see it.
Excellent. Great. So hello, everybody. As the introductions have already said today, my name is Patrick Higgins, and I'm an outreach coordinator with Go Maine. We are a statewide travel resource option for people throughout Maine, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about some of the different services we offer, give people an overview about our program, just kind of use this as an introductory statement. And so one of the things I want to encourage people to do is we have a travel app that I'm going to talk a lot about during this presentation. And so if you have a mobile device present, I encourage you to quickly take a photo of the QR code you see on the screen. It'll give you a sense, it'll give you a real sense of what I'm talking about. And if you do not have a mobile phone present, no worries. We'll provide the link to this website at a future point in time. And so I'll just give like a second for people to do it, and then I'll go ahead and move on. Great. And that'll show up again later if you couldn't get in that brief time. But basically, we are a free statewide travel demand management program, and travel demand management essentially is just reducing the amount of single occupant vehicles anywhere and everywhere. And we are funded by Maine DOT in collaboration with the Turnpike Authority. And we're one of the VMT reduction strategies named in the Maine Won't Wait Climate Action Plan. And for those who aren't familiar with what VMT means, that's vehicle miles traveled. So theoretically, our purpose is to reduce the amount of miles a given car is traveling on the road. We have a couple different program goals. Mainly, we want to engage with our existing members. So employers throughout Maine are members with our program. And so we want to make sure we're continuing to work with them to find ways to reduce that single occupant vehicle use. But also, we are constantly trying to find new employers to work with. I think there are many different people across Maine and different parts of different counties and the like. And so we want to make sure we're both helping the existing people, but also growing our database. And so one similar thing to that is we want to make sure that we're a transportation resource for all Mainers, regardless of trip type. So whether you're carpooling, you're biking, I saw someone from YCCAC's on the call. Tom, we definitely want to support your people as well. And we have a couple different environmental goals. So like I said, vehicle miles traveled, we want to reduce those. CO2 and those greenhouse gases, we definitely want to try and find ways to reduce those. And then trip reduction. When I say trip reduction, it's sort of preventing people from taking trips that otherwise could occur via transit, bike, carpooling, and the like. And I will shamelessly say that we are actively hiring a Northern Maine-based team member to help with some of our rural transportation populations. And so if you know anyone that's passionate about the environment or transportation and lives in that area, please get in touch with me because we're looking to hire someone out there. So how do we achieve these different goals? Like I said, it's transportation solutions for all of our travelers. It's education and engagement activities at work sites and community events. As you see on the screen here, a employer really was interested in growing their bike population. And so one day I went out there with a bunch of bike resources, talked about the different programs we have, and also gave them, we worked in partnership with a bike repair company that actually repaired bikes on site for that person that day. But it really was an opportunity for us to talk about our trip planning software, which if an individual is looking for a carpool, let's say they are looking to either save money on gas or maybe don't have regular access to a ride, we have a phone app, which was that QR code I talked about earlier, where you can go onto the database, search for people who live in your area. If you find someone, you can shoot them a message and see if a carpool option works for you. But additionally, those who are already traveling sustainably, whether you're biking, the bus, or anything like that, you can earn a bunch of different rewards available for individuals. And so we're constantly doing these community events so we can be out there, we can talk with people, understand the needs they have, and just really promote our services. Similar to that, we also have a program called Emergency Ride Home, which it's kind of like an insurance. I put air quotes around insurance for commuters, where if your organization is a partner with us and you are regularly commuting in a sustainable manner, once again, bike, carpool, all that, and you need to get home in the event of an unexpected emergency, we have a reimbursement program that will reimburse you partially for that trip. So really, these are the type of things where we want the emergency ride home program to be, we don't want the fear of an emergency to be the reason someone isn't trying to take a sustainable commute. And so we have these programs that are available for individuals throughout Maine. In terms of some of our employer and community partners, we do work statewide, and I'll show a map that kind of better shows some of our members, but it's really all over. So whether I have a couple sample employers who are in organizations who are on the map here, but it really, every person is unique in Maine and has unique transportation needs, and so does every employer. And so we're constantly finding new ways to work with them, whether it's helping the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard manage their parking situation, or in one situation you see on the screen here, an employer was trying to understand the distribution of employees throughout the region to potentially form carpools. And so we have some mapping capabilities where we could map out employee addresses relative to things like park and rides, which you see on the screen here. So this list is not comprehensive. There are many more partners. I just wanted to give a little sample to show it's everything from manufacturing to science to statewide groups. It's a nice broad coalition that we're constantly finding new people to work with and support. In terms of our progress to date, we have saved commuters in Maine roughly $900,000. If you look at the lack of trips, single occupant vehicle trips they've taken, we've reduced roughly 89,328 trips. As you can see on the screen, we've made some great gains in terms of CO2, and our vehicle miles traveled is eliminated is really high. And the way we get these numbers is through some backend data on our Go Maine trip planner, which if you see on the screen again here, this QR code is the same code I had earlier. But the Go Maine trip planner, it's this resource that's available for all people in Maine, whether your organization is a partner or not. And it's an option, it's a place where people can go to say, hey, I want to go here. What are my options? So if there are transit options available, it will show you your transit options. If you want to know where EV charging stations are, or bike share docks are, or that sort of thing, all that's in a nice map area where you can find information on that. Additionally, this is that carpool database where if you want to find a ride, or maybe you're someone who is driving to a place and is willing to have a partner in the car, you can go ahead and search for people in the database who maybe are making a similar commute as you are. To give you some statistics about our users, as you can see in the map on the left, they are largely concentrated in the southern portion of Maine. That noted, we are a statewide program, and you can see even in the northern tips, there are a couple registered users out there. And so I think what's great is if you live in southern Maine, there's good odds that you could find a carpool option. But if you live in northern Maine, or a place where you don't see some green on the map, you could be the first person that then becomes a future carpooler. As more dots show up, there's more likelihood you'll find someone that matches. In terms of our VMT, I know I had the stat on that previous slide, but to give people some context about where the largest users are, Portland is the largest user base, but there are other locations that we do have nice concentrations of users. And I think this stat I pulled is, if you look at the people who are traveling sustainably within our system, it's a variety of distances people are going. So you're seeing people who take transit on average are traveling 30 miles per trip, or people who work from home are saving 200 miles per trip. So it's a really great way if you're an organization that is trying to adhere to some of your climate goals. We have some data that and anonymized data that we can provide to help employers track how they're impacting the environment. I know we're working with one of the breweries in the Portland area to help them make sure they're meeting some of their sustainability goals. So I think the big takeaway from this slide is it is a statewide program. There are many users who are out there, and we're really just trying to grow that user base and connect people with some opportunities. And so I know we're coming up on my time in terms of presentations. So I'll pause there for any questions. I will just give people a heads up that I will be with Go Maine through roughly mid to the end of August, and there'll be someone new who will be, or it's not someone new, there'll be someone who's already with us that's going to be stepping back into the role soon. So I think between now and the end of August, feel free to contact me. But if you hear from Emily Bezikowicz, don't be surprised. She's more the long-term person for Go Maine. But yeah, I'll open up the floor to any questions about either how to use the app or how we can partner or anything. Any questions, I'm happy to take.
Thank you, Pat. And again, please feel free to enter questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand to come off mute and ask it yourself. One question I have is around accessibility. So being an app, have you found that people have trouble accessing the program?
That's a really good question. I think from a larger perspective, and then we can talk about some of the different accessibility of the app or the website. It is a program that we have worked with other groups, whether it's persons with disabilities or different organizations. Theoretically, there's if you're willing to carpool, there's an option out there, and we definitely encourage people. We are a resource for someone regardless of one's ability, and we try to partner with community groups where possible. So admittedly, it might be harder for someone to find a carpool option using the app, but theoretically, it's up to any individual could use this regardless of their transportation needs. In terms of the app, we make sure our website is fully accessible. So we have a fully accessible website that is an option. I'll drop the main Go Maine. Funny. I'll drop the Go Maine website in the app, which then has a link to the trip planner website. But we've taken steps to make sure that all of our productions are fully accessible, including this. I made sure to make sure that screen readers read this presentation. So if it wasn't working, please contact me, because I like triple check this one. But accessibility is something that's very important to our group. So we definitely want to make sure we're serving all Mainers.
Great, thank you so much. It's really happy to hear you all are doing that. All right, so I am moving a little quickly with the questions because it's somehow already 1:45. And we want to make sure that we have time to get into some discussion. So, as you've heard these presentations, if you have questions for Tim or Pat, feel free to put them in the chat as we move to the next session in today's event. And Zoe, I'm going to ask you to please put the slides back up so I have the questions. So as we said in the beginning, part of these learning communities are really to not only learn, but to do some networking and action building. So we'll stay in one room today to have this conversation. So I welcome you to please raise your hand to participate and use the chat a lot too as well, so that we can hear from as many people as possible. But we'll spend maybe the next 10, 12 minutes talking about these questions. So what we've heard today is presentations on getting to work. And we know that that can be difficult. Like, how do you get to your workplace? So we're wondering, folks in the audience, are any of you already working on this topic? And who are you partnering with? And again, feel free to come off mute. We'd love to hear your voices, but you can also use the chat as well. So in terms of addressing transportation and getting to the workplace. And if you're not working on this topic too, feel free to contribute with why maybe you aren't. Maybe it's not part of your mission or what your organization does, or maybe you're experiencing some barriers or challenges that we could help talk through.
Well, this is, oh, sorry, Tom. I see Tom's hand, but I don't know if I should keep going.
No, go ahead, Julie.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is Julie. I'm from Disability Rights Maine, and excited to be here. I haven't been attending. My colleague Keenan's here as well, but this is really in line with a lot of the work I do indirectly. I would say we don't, as an organization, do transportation, but it's the biggest barrier, one of the biggest barriers I think we see across our clients and just across our work in terms of getting to work. And it's something that in almost every individual case I work on in employment advocacy is an issue. And so I think what part of it is like all of the different eligibility pieces. And I would love to see, I think Go Maine is so exciting, but I think it's one of those pieces that might be really difficult for folks if they don't have smartphone access or internet access, which are also often, issues that some of our clients are facing and other folks are facing. And I think that there could be so much space there to expand, because all the eligibility pieces are really tough to navigate, and there's so many different restrictions. And so, I think it's just hugely important. And the more creative approaches that aren't, eligibility based, but are kind of community based that anyone can access, I think can be even better. And if there's possibility for any kind of accessible vehicles within the Go Maine platforms, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I know that's a huge challenge too for folks is not having accessible vehicles too that are available. So great presentation, just a few thoughts there, and love to hear more, and always something I'm interested to hear about. So
Yeah, I think you raise like a really good point. I think one thing I should have added is, in the event that an individual doesn't necessarily have access to the internet, if they do have access to a phone line, we have a phone line they can call, and on our end, we can go through the search and process to find it. In terms of accessible vehicles, I think this comes up a lot. Is one thing I probably should have better communicated is Go Maine doesn't provide the rides. It's merely kind of like the place where one could say that they do have the rides, but I think there's opportunities, whether it's having our volunteer driver programs listed in there and making sure we communicate that. But I think one thing, as we further build out our website and our trip planner, finding ways to identify, maybe when a user sets up a profile, we ask them if they have an accessible vehicle. That could be an option for them. So I think anytime we can find ways to reform the profiles to help people communicate what their vehicles available are, it's one step amongst that idea that you proposed. But no, that's great feedback that I think we can try and find a better way to incorporate.
Thanks, Julia, for those comments and ideas, and Pat for your response. Tom, we'll go to you next, and then Marcia.
I lowered my hand, but forgot about the mute. Sorry. So we provide a pretty popular work service, basically called the Wave, which provides it's 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we hit a bunch of shifts as well, which is handy. Sanford area, Sanford and Wells, and then Sanford and Biddeford. So we've got quite a few routes going at any given day. And I think one of the challenges is for us is, I guess they call it soft skills for the workers. It seems like a trivial thing at first, but it's a huge problem for transportation providers such as us, because we get a large percentage of no-shows when trips are booked by people that are trying to get to work. And it basically comes down to they forget to call us, don't care to call us, they don't want to go to work. And we show up and they just decided that they don't want to work. And I think it's unfortunately just the particular market we're in terms of the employment situation overall. But it is a huge cost to us and a problem, because we're dispatching a vehicle to pick these folks up, and a lot of times an amazing amount of people just don't show up, aren't there, don't call us, don't want to go to work, and it's costly for everybody. It's costly for us, and we do bill for no-shows on some of our contracts, so it's costly for the people who are providing the money for folks to get to work. So I don't know what the solution is there. We try to educate people and just let them know, hey, we know it's tough, you might forget, but just give us a call. But it's a huge problem, not just for us, but a lot of providers in Maine and nationwide too. So just wanted to mention that. But we want to provide more service and make it more available and efficient to people, but there are some barriers on the provider side.
I do want to jump in real quick and just mention, Tom, too, that York County is one of our whole family services providers. So I think this is such a good example of where programs connecting can make a huge difference, because whole family services, again, is really specifically about just kind of coaching a family about everything that they're trying to do in their lives and helping them to connect to resources. So I think I'm completely aware of those problems, families actually getting to the transportation for whatever their reasons are. So I would love, if you want, Tom, to connect you to the whole family service program too, because they hopefully can maybe support some of that.
Yeah, that would be great, Tim. I wrote down that to follow up on the Fed cap as well. Thanks.
And go ahead, Marcia, and depending on timing, you might be our last question comment. So
I'll talk fast. I'm Marcia Bennett. I am the mobility manager with Western Maine Transportation. And pre-COVID, we were working with a lot of agencies. Like we had a relationship with FedCap up in Oxford County. We serve Oxford, Androscoggin, and Franklin County. So now it's just trying to bring those relationships back as all the agencies are starting to work again. So we're hoping that we're going to get some more or start ramping up more employment type transportation services. But in being in a rural area, especially like Franklin County, we find it very difficult to serve some of the more rural areas. You know, we get a phone call from somebody, is actually an employment specialist that was trying to connect two people from Farmington to a job in Rangeley. That's 40 miles. That's, 50 minutes of travel, and you bring that person, two people up, but then now you don't have anybody that you're bringing back. So like Tom said, you have to think of costs whenever you're providing trips. So, unfortunately we couldn't provide those trips. If the employment specialist would think about transportation before they think of the job, we have a service that runs Farmington down Route 4 to Lewiston, Auburn. So there's, businesses and, all along that corridor that maybe they could have been working with to connect people. So we're trying to educate employment specialists to where our transportation services already exist, which makes it easier. So then, instead of them having to start all over from ground one to find new employment for people, they'll have that information readily available. So it's transportation in the rural area is tough. We're looking at possibly getting more or getting minivans in the future, just because it's really hard to get CDL drivers right now. So we're kind of changing how we're going to provide service. I will say that trying to connect those two people to their job in Rangeley, I did go to the Go Maine website to see if there are any people registered up in Rangeley or Farmington going to Rangeley. I'm like, maybe that's a shot. And unfortunately, no one's registered yet. So I did go to Go Maine and thought I'd give that a try. So we're working on it. We do have an employer down in Bath that we've connected with, and that's been a really good relationship working. I mean, it's actually made it into a regular commuter route now. So, if employers are out there and they want to work with us, we're doing our best to see where we can branch out. And I see Craig has his hand up. So I'll pass it off to him.
Thanks, Marcia. Go ahead, Craig.
Marcia's spot on, but one thing I wanted to add to that is that there seems to be an unwillingness, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding on the part of employers that public transit providers are willing to work with them, but that they may need to provide seed money to get a route that's sponsored by them to get their employees to work. That seed money for that route can make or break the possibility for establishing those services. And Tom, I'm sure you all are dealing with that down at your county as well. But we have the employer in Bath that Marcia mentioned is not the big one. And the larger employer seems to be completely unaware or unwilling to put an investment in place to allow us to assist them, even though they've come to us in the state probably as many as 5 times asking for assistance. So it's a little bit of a head scratcher.
Thank you all. This is a great conversation. I'm going to jump in to wrap us up. And it was a good, what Craig just mentioned about awareness among employers is a great opportunity for me to plug a forum that we're going to be doing that actually Tim and I have put our heads together and plan to invite employers to join Moving Maine stakeholders for a conversation in August. So it'll be another virtual forum, not a repeat of this one, but it will be an opportunity for employers and stakeholders from other sectors to talk about the challenges that folks are seeing And that is scheduled for August 24th from noon to 1. So save the date. We will be sending out a sign up for that. But really the idea for that is to kind of do some matchmaking, if you will, so folks can look at funding opportunities together, or as Craig is suggesting, in some cases, employers may have little pots of money that if they knew who to work with, they could apply it there. We'll have Ryan from Maine DOT on hand to talk about the workforce transportation funding that DOT has available. So please mark your calendar for that. Thank you so much. This was a really great kickoff. We will be following up with slides and a link to the recording and prompt to get your feedback on today. And we hope you will join us next month. We hope you're staying cool, and we welcome to, if you have ideas and thoughts in response to today, please do send them our way at info@movingmaine.org. So thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.